What is up, members of the Geek Army? It's D here at Geekdom 101, and I wanted to let you guys in on what's going on with this video. So I talked to Herms, very, very good friend of mine, and we were talking on Skype for like hours, and we recorded like almost a 2-hour long conversation where we were dissecting the Frieza Saga and the Cell Saga of Dragon Ball Z, the anime, and the conversation was almost 2 hours long. So what I decided to do here with this video is, rather than put the entire thing up, because I already gave you guys a 2-hour Herms interview a few weeks ago, instead, I'm going to cut this up into 4 parts. So you're going to get 4 different videos, pretty much split up from the original conversation. Those of you following Herms on Twitter, you know that he's been rewatching Dragon Ball, the anime, and Z and GT and whatnot, and we're going to cover all that stuff in the future. But with this video, we're going to be talking about the Frieza Saga, the picking up where we left off a little while ago. Herms and I did a video where we covered Dragon Ball all the way until the end of the series, and we covered the Vegeta Saga and a little bit of Namek and Dragon Ball Z. So I'm going to leave a link to that down in the description if you haven't heard that yet, but this is the follow-up, Herms and I talking about the Frieza Saga, part 1 of a 4-part conversation. We're comparing the anime to the manga. We're talking about power scaling. It was a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get to the conversation right now. A little while ago, a man named Herms embarked on a mission to watch all of Dragon Ball within, I think it was a year, from beginning to end. And we're talking about Dragon Ball, Z, GT, and the movies. Not Super, because that's still running. But we have Herms back here today, and we did 2 videos previously where we talked about Dragon Ball and the first 67 or so episodes of DBZ. Well, here today, Herms and I are going to have, just a chill little discussion about his observations from watching the series again. Herms, how are you?
Pretty good.
All right. Now, when was the last time you had seen the series, these episodes, prior to you doing your rewatch or whatever?
Well, I mean, the last time that I watched the entire series, just like from beginning to end, it's like I couldn't even really think about when that would be. I mean, actually, I think this might be this. Well, I can tell you that as far as just watching the entire thing from the first episode of Dragon Ball to the end of GT, like this is the first time I've ever done it in that order. Like I've seen, well, we talked about last time that there was several of the episodes of the original Dragon Ball that I'd never seen just because I'm, so much of a manga guy. But I mean, apart from that, like I've seen I'd previously seen every episode of Z and GT several times, and GT on its own I'd gone through like from beginning to end at least twice. But like this might be the first time I've watched all of Dragon Ball Z just in order.
Yeah, because for those who don't know, because people nowadays don't know, man. Back in the day, we didn't have the series in order. We had to scrummage to find episodes here and there, and you know what I mean? It wasn't like you could just go to Funimation.com and watch the entire thing start to finish. You had to either tape trade or Funimation like dubbed like the second half. You had to go back and watch the Saiyan arc again, and whatever. I wanted to ask you. We're going to pick up with episode 68. 67 was the episode where Goku lands on planet Namek, and then we find out that the teaser, that he might be, as the narrator said, has Goku really become a Super Saiyan? And do you think, bro, if Dragon Ball was being cut up into, I guess, seasonal arcs, do you think that this is a good cliffhanger? Because we had it for 2 years.
Yeah, for the English. Yeah, the original English dub. But, I mean, it's as good a one as any, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Now, moving on.
I wouldn't wait 2 years to go on with it, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was, that's them, but I was just wondering if you thought that was a good cliffhanger. So, moving on, we have the Ginyu arc here. Comparisons to the manga. Was there anything that stuck out to you that you thought was, unnecessary? Because I think a lot of this stuff is pretty solid all the way through.
Yeah, well, I think the Raccoon fight was very well done, but then just with Ginyu and Goku, where I don't think that got paced kind of increasingly poorly. Just like when he's powering up, it's sort of the start of where they have like entire episodes devoted to that kind of thing without actually advancing the story. Like I think the Namek arc is kind of where that type of filler that the series is known for really starts to get out of hand. Like the Saiyan arc, I guess I start saying it the dub way now, but anyway.
You say whatever you want, man.
Saiyan arc is I think it's pretty like overall it's well paced. I think more or less like when they have filler, they just have all those filler episodes that are kind of in the training filler episodes where they're self-contained. So you can skip them or watch them, but they tell like actual stories that wrap up pretty quickly. And then in Namek, that's when they start just kind of dragging things on more and more, and that gets kind of increasingly ridiculous as we go into the fight with Frieza.
Yeah, the Frieza fight in the anime, the original anime, not Kai, I felt was ridiculously long. In fact, Hail Zeon did his little like watch of the series or whatever, and he always recommended to watch the Saiyan Saga or whatever in Z, and then when you get to Namek, switch to Kai because of all the stuff being cut out. I thought it was, it just seems like it was unnecessarily padded out. Were they really close to catching up to the manga during this time?
Yeah. During the Frieza fight, that's the closest they ever got, essentially. So they were pretty desperate to build some kind of cushion between them and where the manga was at. So which is essentially why, that's why you have all that filler. That's also why they had the Garlic Jr. arc to begin with, just to try and build a buffer zone between the anime and the manga. And there's even the guidebook Dragon Ball Z Son Goku Densetsu, they have this comic in the back where it's dramatizing the anime production process and essentially how they would go and have to make up all these new stories to drag things out so that they wouldn't overtake the manga and have no more story to do. And it's set, and it features comic versions of all the actual people making the series, like Kondo Yu, Toriyama's editor at the time, and Koyama and all those people. And it's set specifically during the Frieza arc, and it has, that's the example they use, is that, this chapter, this entire 15-page chapter that just came out of them fighting, if you animated it directly without adding in any filler or anything, it would be about 15 seconds.
Yeah. And the thing is, let me ask you a question about your own personal preference about this. Do you think for anime adaptations from manga, do you feel that the Dragon Ball and other shows too, the route of them adding filler arcs in between the major arcs is the right way to go? Or do you think the Naruto method, and I'm not familiar with Naruto, but this is what I've been told, of them having the fight and then having more padding within the fight and having flashbacks, do you think that works out better for catching up? Or as far as watching, for pure enjoyment, what do you think works out better, having an arc or having the actual fights themselves pad out even more?
I think, for personal preference, I'd prefer things that you could potentially skip if you felt like it. So, I don't know how Naruto is on, sheer skippability. But, what's... again, this is the thing where I've just, with Naruto and One Piece and those series, I've generally stuck entirely to the manga and haven't really seen much of their anime at all. But I've heard people say that, at least until it got really crazy, that Naruto at least had the advantage that they'd have a crazy long filler arc, but you could just skip that, if you could just choose not to watch that and go directly back to when they're adapting manga material. Which is not something you would do with the Frieza arc in Dragon Ball Z, but...
Yeah, you'd have to sit there and really just, you have to deal with Ginyu Frog and... Well, I like Ginyu Frog, but yeah.
Oh, which is why Kai is nice to have now.
Yeah.
I think the fact that the Frieza arc is still, it's very popular among fans here in North America, where generally people didn't read the manga, they just watched, and we didn't have Kai until more recently. The fact that people who grew up watching that version of that story arc only in anime format, the fact that they liked it, I think speaks to the underlying quality of the story. Even in such a bad version of that story where it's really drawn out and not the greatest, the fact that you can still kind of see past that and get hooked on it, I think that says something about the strength of the series.
Yeah, I agree. And now moving on, we have the Frieza fight. Did you feel now watching it over again that, we have Frieza being built up for this entire arc, right? And then we find out, he can transform. And then we find out he can transform again. And then we can finally transform one more time. And then it's 15% power, or 25% power, 50% power, 100% power. It's almost like a trope at this point.
Yeah, it's the whole, like they say, like power creep or power inflation. Or, just like a game of seesaw where it's just back and forth. And I do think, like, okay, during the first half of the arc where, it's just first form Frieza hanging out in his chair, not directly fighting. They do a really good job of building him up. And then the whole thing with their scouters and the battle power numbers, like, it really does pay, like, it gets silly at times, but it really pays off where they have him reveal his powers, like, oh, you're 42,000. Well, that's pretty good. But by the way, I'm 530,000. Like, that's a really good moment. And that kind of justifies having those, like, at that point, you're at least, even if you don't pay that much attention, you have, like, the context for those numbers that you can tell, like, well, that's a huge number, 530,000. And then, so they build up first form Frieza really well. But then in the second half of the arc, it's almost like, it's like there's so much inflation that the second half of the arc almost retroactively ruins the first half of the arc, because nothing that happens in the first half with Zarbon and Dodoria and even the Ginyu Force, all that seems kind of meaningless by the end, just because of all the different Frieza forms. Like, no one, even Ginyu, like, they pale in comparison to the weakest of Frieza's forms, and then Frieza's first form seems pretty insignificant by the time his fourth form comes around, and then his base force fourth form is kind of meaningless compared to his full power. So it's like, I don't know, it's like Frieza, he's so powerful that he makes himself look weak, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it's very strange, and it's almost like it seems like Toriyama pulled it out of his ass, bro. Honestly, the different forms come off like, I don't think he was intending for Frieza to transform. We know that Zarbon mentioned it, right?
Yeah, he mentions he can transform, relatively early on, but after his first form has been established for a while, and he says, oh, he can transform, which, speaking of anime manga differences, that the anime leaves out the line where Zarbon says that. And so later on, if you're only watching the anime, it's kind of out of nowhere where Vegeta's like, oh yeah, Zarbon said you could transform.
Yes.
So it's like it's a minor plot hole in the anime version, because they, for some random reason, they just chopped out that kind of important exposition. But anyway, so yeah, they establish he can transform, and then the shock revelation is that, oh, he can transform a total of 4 times. So they have that surprise, and then he reaches his fourth form, but then they have the next surprise where it turns out, like, oh, even now I'm not even using half of my power. And so they have that, and then eventually Goku, he's a Super Saiyan now, he seems to have the upper hand, so they have the final thing where it's like, oh, and by the way, I can survive in the vacuum of space, so if I destroy the planet, then even though you're so strong now, I can still come out on top with this cheap strategy thing. So it's like, he has one too many gimmicks like that, I guess you could say. It's like two of those...
Trump cards, right?
Yeah, too many trump cards. It's like one of those could be good. 2 of those, it's kind of impressive where he just pulls out like like additional, like 2 surprises like that, it could be good, but I think it does overplay it by the end, where it's very ripe for parody.
Absolutely, and of course we have Team Force so they'll do that for us, and of course your tweets. Now, did you? Okay. Toriyama said Frieza can transform, but he never hinted at him having multiple transformations. Now, I want to discuss this with you because there's a couple of weird things going on here. Zarbon, his whole thing is that they're doing the Beauty and the Beast gimmick, where he's beautiful or whatever, and then he becomes the Beast when he transforms, and that's his true form. With Frieza, he explains that his weaker forms are there for him to conserve power so that he doesn't destroy things. But Herms, bro, when I see him in his fourth form, he seems pretty, collected. Well, what was up with that?
It seems... well, I guess to be nitpicky, I don't think it's ever established that Zarbon's ugly form is his true form. He just says, like, he has these 2 different forms, one of which is stronger, but he doesn't like that one as much. And then when Vegeta is talking about how Frieza will transform, he's like, yeah, this is a common thing, so that races throughout the universe do for various reasons. Like some usually conserve energy or whatever, and then it's Frieza who butts in and says like, "Well, actually, I'm different because my final form is my true form, and all these other ones are just kind of there to help control my power, which is otherwise too amazing." Which is kind of I hate to overuse the word trope, but it is kind of a trope that we get throughout a lot of these shonen manga, where it's Bui in Yu Yu Hakusho and Boros in One Punch Man, where it's like the same idea where they're wearing armor to control their power, which is otherwise like too much for them to handle. And it's the thing where Frieza says this, and then when he goes into his second form, he does say, like, he seems to be out of control for a while there, where it's like, he just lifts up his hand and there's this huge explosion. It's like, I kind of overdid it there. I didn't mean to do it that much. And then he stabs Krillin through the chest, and even then he's like, oh, oops, didn't mean to do that. I can't be as gentle as I was before. So they play it up with his second form a lot, and then it seems like that idea goes away more and more. So his final form, which by this logic should be the least controllable, it is weird. It turns out that he can apparently control his power very well because because he's got it down to a number system where it's like, well, currently I guess he says like, oh, I'm not. He never really reveals exactly how much he's using before, but he says like, if I take it up to 50%, then I'll beat you for sure. And then later on he's like, oh, that attack just now wasn't even 70%. So he's like got it really precise for some reason. But I guess
it's like a plot hole.
I mean, it might work because even throughout this, he's always fighting. So it's possible that he can control himself when he's fighting, but he couldn't be able to exist in his fourth form in like an everyday context. Like the thing I think of is there's the filler for the Cell arc where it's Goku and Gohan, where they're in their full power Super Saiyan forms, where they're trying to just live their life like that. And I mean, that's in the manga too, but the anime has the thing specifically where they're trying to eat their meal and they keep breaking cups and things like that. So it's like maybe that's the level Frieza's at, where in his fourth form he can do the 50% stuff, like he controlled to that degree, but if he tried to live like that, he'd just be breaking cups all the time and it would just be a hassle, which isn't quite as scary as what it's implied at first, but I guess you could at least try and make it consistent that way.
It just because that once he hits his final form, you're expecting chaos, and it was chaotic, but it was just kind of, whatever.
Well, he's strong, but it's like you think
he like flicks his finger and the whole mountainside gets knocked over type thing, right?
Yeah,
that's what
like
you're expecting.
Like people wouldn't be able to even get close to him without disintegrating or something, but I guess that would just be too inconvenient to continue the story like that.
Now
or like the thing with Cell, jumping ahead, where again there's the anime only stuff where they have him go to the TV station, which is in the manga, but where he's like just by being around things, there's an invisible force field around things where he'll reach out to touch a desk and the desk will like kind of collapse under his hand.
Yeah,
that's a kind of thing you might expect. Although even with Cell, that like it's in that one scene and then it's not there ever again.
Not to mention that we've got these guys who are planetary busters. I mean, it's just like when you see in Dragon Ball Super Episode 1 when Beerus taps the little desk and half the planet gets blown up. Like that's kind of what I was expecting, right? Because if Vegeta can, has planetary destructive powers in the Vegeta Saga, you would think that Frieza and Goku's battle would be destroying moons and suns and shit like that. It's one of those things where Dragon Ball's power scaling, like I can kind of see. Let me ask you about this real quick and get your thoughts. I can kind of see why some people feel this way. A lot of people think that with the Frieza Saga, starting with this saga, is when Toriyama kind of, as far as being a good writer, kind of started to fall apart a little bit, and his power scaling started to get really jacked. I mean, it's nowhere near as bad as the Buu arc, but do you agree with that? Do you think that as a writer, he started to kind of, I don't know what you call it?
Well, I think I'd take it further. I think, strictly speaking, it's the Vegeta arc where it's kind of stops making sense. Because, well, like you said, okay, if Vegeta can blow up a planet at all, then it's like you have Raccoon, who's supposed to be a lot stronger than Vegeta was at that point, And his big thing is that Raccoon has his like big attack. Like they talk about how, oh, it's powerful enough to like distort the shape of the planet, which is impressive, obviously, but it's not as it's compared to Vegeta's Gallic gun, which was supposed to completely like obliterate the Earth.
That's right.
So already, like just midway through the Namek arc, you've got that inconsistency, and then Raccoon is supposed to be nothing compared to Frieza's first form. And like even if we say like maybe Vegeta's bluffing when he says he'll destroy the Earth, but I mean Frieza's first form we see it can destroy a planet, and his first form is nothing compared to his final form's true power. So it's like just on its own, like the Namek arc it seems like no one should be able to do anything without destroying it, like at least a continent or two, which obviously would just get ridiculous if you tried to portray that. So I can see why Toriyama would just kind of dial it back. And I think we should I don't think power scaling and good writing actually go together.
It's hard, yeah.
I can live with these kind of inconsistencies if you get a good story. Like, I think if you made all this stuff completely consistent, it would just be ridiculous. It would just get unbelievably boring or just unworkable. Like, you can have anyone do anything without just killing everyone in their immediate vicinity, or I don't think these are the kinds of details that actually matter for storytelling purposes.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it never bothered me, but I mean, it's been discussed. I mean, the biggest one now is in Super, where you have Goku and Beerus, cracking the galaxy or whatever, and then you've got the Goku Frieza fight, where Goku is stronger in his blue-haired form, and then you go a step further beyond that, and you're seeing this fight now with Goku Black. And Goku, after all this training, 3 years in the Room of Spirit and Time, more training with Whis, more stuff in Universe 6 arc, all this stuff, and they're just destroying buildings, when you would think that destroying buildings is like something that Piccolo Daimao could do, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, so on that scale, I think that, again, like with Vegeta in the Saiyan arc, I think that's the last time that the characters legitimately feel stronger than the ones in the previous arc. Like, because Vegeta, he has a lot of impressive stuff where he powers up and it shakes the planet. And, I mean, even his fight with Goku, it's the first time we really see people freely, that kind of Superman flying around kind of thing. And that's also like that's the first arc where you get like generic ki blasts being fired off like they're nothing. Like, even before, like even in the 23rd tournament arc, like, it's still like a big thing whenever a character fires a ki blast. Like, that's still supposed to be like one of their best moves. Whereas in the Saiyan arc, that's where we start getting, for the first time, just the idea that that's just a basic thing that anyone can do as easily as punching. And so because of that, and that's when everyone starts flying around like it's just nothing. And so
yeah, I mean, in the 23rd Budokai, everybody flying was a big deal.
Yeah, like it's treated as a big thing when Goku at the end he flies to defeat Piccolo.
Yeah.
And then so anyway, I mean, contrast that with the Saiyan arc. Those things become commonplace, which makes it's good because you can see like concrete examples of the characters getting stronger than they were previously. It's like anyone would, like, if you showed someone these arcs out of order, they could easily tell, like, oh well, this must come later because they're stronger. Whereas, yeah, with like the Frieza arc onwards, like, I don't think you could just with no context determine that Frieza and Goku are supposed to be stronger or weaker. I don't think you could tell that Frieza is supposed to actually be stronger than Raccoon, or that Cell's supposed to be stronger than Frieza or anything like that.
So that's it for part 1, guys. I'm going to put also in the description a link to the original archive where Herms has his, numbers for reviewing the episodes and whatnot. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and part 2 is going to be coming out very, very soon, where we continue talking about the Frieza Saga into Garlic Jr., and then we'll go ahead and talk about the Cell Saga. Lots of fun tidbits and stuff that you may or may not know, and I hope you enjoyed this kind of laid-back conversation. If you want to see more of it, leave a comment down below, because Herms and I have a lot to cover. So thank you guys as always. Hope you have a great rest of your day.